Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new movie franchise ranking on Max Talks Movies. And because Godzilla vs. Kong just dropped on HBO Max and in theaters, so I'm going to stop and rank all four films in the Monsterverse from 4 to number 1. Before we get into my ranking of the Monsterverse, please like this video. If you're new to the channel, my name is Max Sonnenberg. I am the host of Max Talks Movies. I do movie reviews, TV show reviews, streaming platform reviews, and rankings like these. If you like any one of those things, please consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing that bell to the channel so we get to 100 subscribers. Share the video with people who you know. Also, if you are new to the channel, let's have a fun discussion in the comment section down below. I respond to all comments. So let's talk about the verse. I've actually looked up a lot of people's rankings heading into, I knew my own ranking. I wanted to see other people's thoughts, and a lot of people have totally different rankings. So I want to see your rankings. Is my number 4 your number 1? Is my number 1 your number 4? Stuff like that. Let's have a fun discussion in the comment section down below. And now let's get started. Also, I have seen all 4 of these films in theaters. Yes, I did check out Godzilla vs. Kong in theaters. This past Friday, I have a review out of Godzilla vs. Kong with my full non-spoiler breakdown, so I'll leave a link for that next to my head at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. And now let's get into my ranking. So coming in at number 4 out of 4 is Godzilla King of the Monsters. Now, this is a movie that I actually had a ton of fun with in the theater. I went to see this with a bunch of friends. We saw it in IMAX. It felt like a fun movie because, again, just like most of these movies I'll talk about in here, there's some really great action going on, but the human stuff isn't really that good. Now, I'll talk about this later when I talk about the 2014 film Godzilla, but this film takes a lot of the critiques of that film and goes up by 11 with that. A lot of people complain about that first Godzilla film, the fact that there really isn't any Godzilla in the movie. So in this movie, most of the movie, I guess for the most part, is a lot more Godzilla fighting all these types of creatures like Ghidorah, as you see on the poster. And when Godzilla is fighting these monsters, the CGI is really, really good. The fight scenes are fun enough. But what kills this movie more than any other Monsterverse film is that these are by far the worst human characters we've gotten so far in the Monsterverse. A lot of the characters, it's so stereotypically dull and bad. The Therefore Miga storyline goes so dark, and they try to give her a redemption storyline by the end of the movie that really did not work. We have characters who, after seeing an event happen, are giving a speech to everyone minutes after this huge attack on some place, and they already have a PowerPoint presentation going on with the right video. It just felt so scripted and not those characters, no one you were rooting for in the movie. Millie Bobby Brown maybe was the person you were rooting for the most in the movie, but even her, she was just daughter in distress the entire film, and she wasn't really doing anything that meaningful other than just running away from Godzilla and at times rooting for Godzilla at the end of the day. There's a lot of characters who they bring back from the 2014 film, like Ken Watanabe. That all didn't work as well. So this film, for me, just does not work because and also a lot of the action with Godzilla is all at night or in rainy areas. It doesn't actually take place during the day for the most part. So at times it is kind of tough to see stuff going on unless Godzilla is using his breath, atomic breath. But if he's not using that, the action scenes actually can be tough to watch. So I've rewatched this film, I think 2 or 3 times since the theater, and it gets worse every time. I'm trying not to go back and watch this film, but I did for this review. So let's move into number 3, and that is Kong Skull Island, a film that, again, now I even like this a lot more than Godzilla King of Monsters in the theater. And this easily is the best cast that they have gotten in any of the 4 movies. And this is actually a prequel, so it's not really it set up something in the post-credit scene, but this film, more than the rest, does not really set up anything less in the Monsterverse universe. While Godzilla, his 3 parts of this franchise are all pretty connective tissue with a lot of characters coming back. This film has no characters coming back to Godzilla versus Kong. So this is pretty much its own little film in this verse. And I thought it was fun, again, enough. I think the Kong action is really, really good. And what benefits this film more than most is that while the human characters still are pretty terrible, at least some of the actors are A-list actors. And there's actually one human character that I really enjoy in the film, and that was John C. Reilly's character, who is stuck on the island. And once he gives you background on his character, he becomes my favorite part of the entire film on the human side. But Tom Hiddleston is pretty, he's just Tom, he's very meh. The character is very meh. Brie Larson's a photographer who we don't really care about. John Goodman, Samuel L. Jackson. Now, this clearly is the best cast of human-wise, but still, there really isn't any human connection to Kong, except these people figuring out the island. They get stuck on the island. How can they get out of the island while Kong is doing other things with other creatures? I just think the film is very all over the place at times. At times, it tries to give you big time dramatic character deaths. And then once the death happens, it's played for comedy. Or if a big death will happen, it'll never be brought up for the rest of the movie. And characters just don't ever think about death. They either die and we just move on to the next thing. And there's just no time to breathe after a huge character. I mean, a lot of big time characters do die in the movie. And it just gets forgotten about. And it just felt like the movie didn't have any stakes because the people who were dying, the movie was telling us we shouldn't care about the deaths. At the same time, they were trying to give it dramatic deaths. So it was a weird mixture. I do like this film more just because the human characters are better in this one. The cast, at least even when they're bad, they're at least charismatic actors doing a good job. So that's why Kong Skull Island comes in number 3. Coming in number 2, and I literally just flipped this. A day ago. This 1 and 2 have come back and forth with me, but then I really thought about it, and the films I enjoy the most. And coming in number 2 is Godzilla, which came out in 2014, Gareth Edwards. And now, while this film, in my opinion, has the best human storylines in the entire Monsterverse, I think the other 3 films suffer heavily from dull to terrible and distracting human storylines. But this one actually has a compelling first 30 to 45 minutes with Bryan Cranston's character, even though he does get killed off. And I think that was a huge mistake by the script. His character actually had a really good connection to Godzilla, and he should have been really the main focus of the movie. And he was for the first 30 to 45 minutes. But then once he gets killed off, it's about his son, who's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. And you have, the Maximoff twins in the movie with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen. And they're still good in the movie, but their human emotion isn't as great. Now, I am actually a fan about wanting to tell a good story and not have Godzilla in the movie as much, especially for a film that is kicking off a universe. You can't just do a Godzilla versus Kong to kick off an entire cinematic universe. You have to actually take your time with the characters. So I'm not one of those people who's now, I think the way they handled Godzilla not being in the film that much was not that great. We had shots where Godzilla was fighting and we cut to a news thing about it. Or we were watching a Godzilla fight and the doors were closing and we couldn't keep watching that Godzilla fight. Now, those things I'm not a huge fan of. They could have executed the fact that Godzilla wasn't going to be in the movie that much a lot better. But the third act is pretty great when Godzilla actually shows up and starts, killing things and fighting people. It gets pretty fun. And as I said, I think it's the best human storyline with Cranston's character. Then nothing has come close to Bryan Cranston's character. Clearly the best human character, adult human character that we've gotten in the entire Monsterverse. And that has carried this film into number 2. But again, this film isn't as action heavy as it probably should be. And at times it does get distracting that you're watching a Godzilla movie and Godzilla is really never in the movie, which at times, even though I'm not a huge complainer of that, when you actually reflect on the story and the fact that the film is called Godzilla, you probably people pay the money to see this character. And when you don't put him on screen, you get a lot of angry people. That's what a lot of people say about this film. But this was always my number 1, and I battled it. It was my number 1. And then a day after, I slept on my thoughts of my number 1, which is actually Godzilla versus Kong, coming in at number 1 on this list. I had a lot of fun. Now, obviously, this movie will have some special component to it. Yes, but I'm not judging this movie because this is the first movie that I saw in theaters in over a year. I'm judging this movie based on its comparison to the rest of the Monsterverse. And as I said, this is not a strong universe. I gave this movie a 3 out of 5 stars, and this is the best movie, in my opinion, in the entire Monsterverse. That shows you how weak these 4 films are. Now, this film clearly has the best action, in my opinion, in the entire Monsterverse. When Godzilla and Kong are fighting each other, it's really, really great stuff with really good CGI. And I actually and when Kong went to his island and he actually fought off two alien creatures, I guess, whatever, two creatures, that was also a really inventive action set piece. And I really enjoyed that Kong was really the main character in the movie. You already had two movies of Godzilla, and Godzilla really isn't close to a person. You can't really humanize Godzilla. He's just a big guy doing stuff. Kong, because he has some human, features with it being a gorilla, you could really use his character to bring a lot of emotion out of the movie. And his relationship with that 7-year-old kid who communicates with through sign language, that was one of the brighter spots and one of my favorite human storylines in the entire Monsterverse, because that actually brought a lot of deep emotion into the film between those two characters alone. Now, while that was probably, and Brian Tyree Henry coming in for comic relief, and he's such a good actor, and this role could have been really bland, but he definitely elevated it. The rest of the movie has very average or annoying human characters. Skarsgård and Rebecca Hall are very dull. Millie Bobby Brown is on a subplot that we're not really interested in because it has nothing to do with Godzilla and Kong. And as I have continued to actually break down the movie in my head and think about the story, this is a dumb movie. The film does not make a lot of sense. And when you actually realize what they did in the movie with the story, it's a pretty terrible script and not a good story whatsoever, because they have to make some really dumb choices. They have to give you an excuse on why these two titans will face off, and at times it gets too dumb. But as I said, while the fight scenes are really great and this human storyline and Brian Tyree Henry for comic relief, it makes it a fun movie and a movie that you have to see in the theater. If you've already checked it out on HBO Max and you didn't like it, I get it. But if you actually like the movie on HBO Max, I think you'll love it in the theater if you already like it on HBO Max. So stay safe in the theater if you want to see this in the theater. So that's my ranking of the Monsterverse. Again, my ranking: Godzilla versus Kong coming in at number 1. Number 2, Godzilla 2014. Number 3, Kong Skull Island. And number 4, Godzilla King of Monsters. And if you are new to the channel, I've already done my full non-spoiler breakdown of my thoughts of Godzilla versus Kong. I did not do my full review here, so that you can click that video next to my head. If you also, I've watched 24 new movies this year. That will also be next to my head. I've got a lot more reviews coming down the pipeline. Fridays are my Falcon and Winter Soldier days, and they're going to become possibly my Invincible days. I just started Invincible. I'm catching up right now, and then I'll be doing reviews of that and more movies. Thunder Force comes out on Friday, so a lot more reviews and rankings coming down the line. So subscribe, ring the bell, share, like, do all of those things. Thank you guys so much for watching my review, and I'll see you guys soon.